So this morning I've brought in my good friend. Many of you know him, many of you don't. Luke Redus with Compassion United. They're building this awesome project called Miracle City, and I just thought you guys need to hear more about this. So I asked them to come and speak with us and let us know about what's going on in Compassion United in Miracle City, and also to share a word with us as well. Come on up, brother.
The difficulty that I don't think a lot of people kind of understand about homelessness isn't necessarily not having income or not showering every day or whatever. The worst part is not having any place to sit and rest and be safe. Having that place that opens up every day so that when you're through with the night and trying to find any place to just rest, here's this place. Doors are open, there's light inside, there's warm coffee, benches to sit down on. You know, it's literally a godsend.
Once the court system was finished with me, unfortunately they just release you on the street. Ended up living in a shed behind a gentleman's house, me and a raccoon who didn't like me very much. There was a gentleman who had preached in the jail. His name was Kevin, and he came to my mind, and I said, I think I'll call Kevin and see if he can help me. And actually got a hold of his wife, and she said, well, Kevin's preaching down at the Conroe House of Prayer. When I walked in there, I knew right away I was where I was supposed to be.
They let me in, gave me this enormous plate of food, and then said, come back tomorrow morning for coffee. And that's how it started.
You know, God really gave me my 45th chance in Freedom House.
I came to Hosanna House probably at the end of October of last year, and so basically I was 2 years of sobriety, and then things got rough again, and so I knew I needed help.
You know, there comes a point in your life when you realize you may not know exactly how to do life, and it's okay to get help from somebody else.
When I got here, I didn't really, I didn't have a relationship with the Lord, and so there were people here who I got to see their relationship with the Lord, and then they were able to speak into me and kind of guide me.
It's a safe place to be, and the people are genuine, and there's no exterior motives, no pushing in certain directions. It's really just time to figure out just be with the Lord and figure out where the direction to go from here is.
I realized I now have a bed. I now have hot water. I have a roof over my head, a raccoon I don't have to deal with, and people who say they actually care about me, And it took some time, but it didn't take long to figure out they really did care about me.
People that don't think about themselves first, really, it's just a selfless group of people.
And if it wasn't for their grace and forgiveness and them allowing me to grow as a person and as a man, and then I wouldn't be where I am today.
I've got an IRA. If you talked to me 2 years ago and said, hey, in 2 years you'll have an IRA, I'd have been like, okay, dude, sure. I have an IRA, and I have a full-time job.
The journey it's been bumpy, it's been cleansing.
Since coming through Hosanna House, I can say my life has just gotten better and better and better.
I'm not very religious, but Compassion United taught me that there's a difference between theology, religion, doctrine, and grace. And this whole place, this whole thing is the embodiment of what grace means.
We got to come here and we experienced just pure love of the Father. And that's what truly changed us. And these houses facilitate that, changing this area by changing people's lives at their very core.
I want to say thank you for giving me the time to actually allow the Lord to make some serious changes in me and then give me the opportunity to share those changes with others. Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Good morning. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to come and share with you all. I love being here. It's been too long. I'll blame that on Scott. So this morning, this video that you all just watched, it was people who've gone through our program, and what their life looks like now. And, that speaks to, our desire to transition people out of homelessness. And because, a lot of what we do focuses on that, people think that that's all that we do. But throughout the conversation that we're going to have today, you'll see that there's plenty of other things that are taking place with Compassion United that don't necessarily deal with homelessness. In fact, I don't even consider Compassion United a ministry to the homeless. The heart behind what Compassion United does is, we are passionate about seeing the world transformed. We are passionate about seeing our community transformed. We're passionate about seeing individual lives transformed. And, we believe wholeheartedly, what Scott was sharing about us being new creations and the former things passing away. That is what we communicate. That's what we live. That's what we walk out every day. And that is what truly, that revelation, living in that, is what transforms people's lives. That's a big deal. Scott was talking before about our glory, right? Our glory. And I've been there at that place where, somebody will come up and give you a compliment and you're like, all to the glory of the Lord. Like, oh my gosh, don't anybody say anything nice about me or God's going to get offended if I don't, and that came from a heart, from this perception of separation from God. Like, because we think about God sometimes, like I'm here and he's up there, or I'm here and he's, if I don't feel it, right, I've got to kind of do something so that I feel like he's with me again, and that's not condemnation. I mean, I'm not doing that to put anybody, I mean, we still sometimes, I used to be very religious about like, when we would sing the song, I'm desperate for, like, why are you desperate for God? He's there all the time, but realistically, sometimes we feel that way, right? Right? We know that he's right there, but sometimes we feel like he's not. But whenever we live in the reality of our oneness with God, of our in-godness, it's easier for us to see that his glory and our glory, our glory is his glory, right? Any glory we have is just a reflection of him. Paul says that as we behold him, as in a mirror, we are transformed into that likeness from glory to glory. And if you're looking like glory, then you're going to look glorious, right? I just, it's interesting that idea. Do you know the Eastern Orthodox Church? I'm getting off, but I'm going to get back on this in a minute. Sorry, it's really important. The Eastern Orthodox Church, you want to know how they define righteousness? How they perceive the word, how they define the word righteousness in the Bible? Walking in the constant awareness of our oneness with God. Like it's not, we westernize it and say being in right standing with God. Yes, that's true. That's part of it. We will equate it to behavior. This is a righteous person because he does righteous things, but the reality is all of that good behavior. I'm sorry, am I on the tape? Sorry. Oh, you're good. I just want to get real close to you all. No. All of that good behavior is an overflow of walking in the constant awareness of your oneness with God. If any man is in Christ, right, he is one spirit with God. And at the heart of what we want to communicate is that that's who we are. And through the various different programs that I'll tell you a little bit more about with Compassion United, they're all focused on this aspect of our spiritual reality, that we're walking in oneness with God. That oneness with God changes things. An awareness of that changes things. That's what I'm renewing my mind to. Me still, every day, is making sure that my awareness of my oneness with God is a continuous thing. When slavery was ended, Emancipation Proclamation happened, slavery was ended, right? And there were a lot of Southern slaves who didn't realize that slavery had ended, right? Slave masters weren't going to tell them that. But then they found out that slavery was over, right? And so they got this revelation of freedom, right? But then, I come from the charismatic kind of background where we think that, everything's going to be solved when, somebody lays hands on you and prays you and zaps you, and, maybe you fall over for a minute and shake some and talk funny, and then all your problems are going to go away. But realistically, it's not like that. Somebody might do that thing and it is an impartation, but then there's still a process. You see, when the slaves started walking in freedom, they didn't know how to walk in freedom, right? When the Israelites came out of Egypt, they didn't know how to live not as slaves. So they had to renew their mind to the reality of the freedom that they had. And it's the same thing with us. I mean, we're free from sin. We're free from it. Why do I still sin? Well, because you don't know you're free from it. I mean, you might intellectually understand that you're free from it, but do you really live in the constant awareness of your freedom from sin? And so with Compassion United, our desire is to instill that reality in people, to walk with them through that, and to help them realize that, man, they are made in the image of God. They were created after the image and likeness of the Father in righteousness and true holiness. And I will tell you this, I lived life for so many years thinking that I was a sinner and thinking that I was corrupt and foul. And as a man thinks in his heart, so is he, right? And so guess what I did? I lived out my truth. And the problem is that wasn't the truth. I'm a new creation. I'm reborn, rebirthed, brand new is who I am. And whenever I started walking in the reality of my oneness with God, living out the righteousness that was given to me through the resurrection of Christ, guess what I stopped doing? I stopped living like I was just a no good, dirty, rotten sinner. And so we have seen so much transformation in people's lives by communicating this. Hey, listen, I feed people what I'm fed, and that's what changed my life, right? And, we have seen that happen over and over again throughout the whole arrangement of programs that we have. But here's a couple of more faces. This is Kenny. Kenny came to Conroe. Kenny's greatest desire, his purpose in life at that point was to come to Conroe so he could get some help getting on disability. He had had a traumatic brain injury. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. He was trying to be a professional wrestler, and it didn't work. So he hurt his head, and his family said, well, son, you ain't never going to be able to work again. I'm sorry, I talk like that because I grew up in a trailer park, and I think that's how my family talked. Anyway, whenever I'm imitating somebody who sounds like that. Anyway, that's what his family told him, is that he would never be able to work again, and so he just needed to get on disability. So that's what Kenny came to town to do. And so we met Kenny. He was staying at the Salvation Army, and he came to the Conroe House of Prayer one morning, and he said, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to get some help getting on disability. And I'm like, well, you look fine. And maybe you thought about working? You thought about something different? And he said, okay. And so we brought him into our men's home, and his mentor actually worked for Consolidated. And before his brain injury, Kenny ran data cable. That was something that he did for a living, and he was good at it. And so his mentor was able to get him a job at Consolidated as a contractor, and then he got hired on full-time, and Kenny's been working at Consolidated for 4 years now. Has his own place. He's doing fine. He's not on disability or any kind of government program. This is Patricia. Patricia, same kind of story with no disability. She had just lost everything, and she was living in her car. She came into the program. She was actually our house coordinator at our women's home for a while. Now she's married. She works part-time as a waitress, but she also has a commercial janitorial service that she's building up as well. Doing great. This is Charles, the guy in the middle in the green shirt. Charles was addicted to crack cocaine. 18 years. He was struggling with that addiction. And he came into the house. Charles became a certified crane operator and probably makes more than like half of us combined right now. To the point where he works a job that's a contract job for 4 months, and then he just kind of takes a couple of months off because he can. And so he's doing great. He owns property now. He's slowly putting mobile homes on the property and is renting them out to people. And so he also has a side hustle, and he's sober. He's been sober for 5 years now. He's doing great. This is Micah, the guy. Micah's funny. He's the guy with the tie in the middle. Micah was actually a child actor. He was on Beverly Hills 90210 as a child in the 90s. And that lifestyle, there were just things that happened within that caused him a lot of distress. And, he turned to alcohol for that. And now Micah married. I got to officiate his wedding twice, actually, because his wedding happened during the ice storm, and so I married he and his wife over Zoom, and then we did an actual ceremony after that. And these are all lives that have, listen. I'm not going to say that everything's perfect for them now. I'm not going to say that they've got it all together, because you know what? I don't have it all together, and I've been doing this longer than them. But they've had an encounter with God, and they've had encounter with a family of people who believe in them and who encourage them. And all of them, everybody whose picture I just showed you, whenever things start getting a little rough, they call family. They call us. And that's what the church does. That's what the church is. It's family. I was sharing with someone. This is going to make more sense as I show everything to you. I was sharing with them the Miracle City project that we're working on. And they asked me, they said, well, are you going to have an expression of the church on this campus? And I was like, this is. This is an expression of the church. All of this. This is what we're going to be like, discipling people. We're going to be family for people. We're going to be building community, and we're going to be changing the world together. We're going to be empowering these people who had no hope and thought that they had nothing. We're going to be empowering them to make a difference. What about that's not church? I'm just really, really excited. So I am so far off of what I was going to. Okay, here we go. Really quickly, after this, I'm going to share this stuff, and then I would like for you all to ask questions. And if you don't, it's going to be awkward, because I'm going to just stand here. Scott said I had until 12:30, I think, right, to talk today? No. Be thinking of questions to ask, and I would like to encourage that conversation. The mission of Compassion United is to transform communities by serving their forgotten and marginalized through outreach, relief, and empowerment. That's sort of our 3-step approach to what we do. Outreach, obviously, you go where people are, right? You got to go there. Relief, there's an immediate need that people have. It might be food. It might be clothing. It might be a hug. It might be for you to sit next to them while they cry, right? But us doing that, offering that thing, is being community with them. And that's not a tactic. It's not a technique. It's a genuine thing. We can bring comfort to people who are hurting with no strings attached, right? I know the mindset that we have sometimes from an evangelical standpoint is that the purpose of me showing relief is so that you can hear the gospel. No, the purpose of me showing relief is because that's what the gospel looks like, So, people will say, well, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And that's true, but it's so much easier to teach a man to fish when he's not hungry, right? And so that leads us into the next aspect, and this is what I think is the better part of what we do, and that's empowerment. We want to not enable people, right? We don't want to become anybody's hero, anybody's savior. We want to show people that with, the same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in them, and that they can do it. They can make it. They can stand on their own 2 feet. And so those who are ready to make a transition in their life, we invite them into our program. So really quickly, I'm going to show you what that looks like, and I don't want y'all to feel like you have to read every single thing that's up there. But this is kind of the family of programs right now. So we have Breakfast in the Park, which is a weekly outreach to the unsheltered in Conroe. We have Destiny Kids, which y'all are familiar with Destiny Kids. I don't know if y'all have heard anything about those people. I hear it's a cult. No. So, have y'all shared anything about what's potentially in the works about any of that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's exciting, but I guess we're not going to tell you about that yet. Luke said I can't. It's good possibilities. Outreach to children and youth in Conroe that encourages them and equips them for life. I'm just really proud of what Luke and Katie have done with that. Katie's been a part of it since 2012, since it first started. And 2012, right? Yeah. And Luke came along in 2014 or 15. Yeah. And just it's amazing. Terry's Tables Food Pantry. We, through our food pantry, provided close to 1 million pounds of grocery to those in need last year. The Conroe House of Prayer is a church for the unsheltered that they can come to 5 days a week for food, clothing, hygiene, guidance. Yes, I know that guy made you mad, but you don't need to punch him in the face. That kind of guidance is great, especially not in the middle of worship, because that has happened. I've been preaching on peace, right? Peace. And one guy stands up over the table and pow, punches the other guy. I'm like, I love my church. It's great. Praise Jesus. This is where you need to be if you feel like you got to hit somebody. Come on, y'all have thought about hitting somebody in church before, right? Not Scott, though. No. No. Freedom House is our home for men who are ready to make a change in their life and experience success in their future. Hosanna House is the home for women who are, ready to see the value that they have and to learn to live a life that reflects the destiny that God has made available to them. We had another transition house called the Joy Home and the Joy House, and that was for women in crisis pregnancy. We lost that in Harvey, but we have a plan to rebuild that, and I'll share that in a minute. And then Fresh Start is our supportive service to our transition homes. And basically what Fresh Start does is sort of comes along and provides everything that the people in our homes need to kind of move them forward in life. So do they need to get their ID? Fresh Start helps them with that. Do they need to, pay fines? All of this stuff, these operational things that they need to get back on their feet. But in addition to that, we do things where we find out about them. We take various assessments where we learn about their personality. We learn about their strengths. We learn about what motivates them. We learn about their emotional maturity, because that's a bigger deal than you might think. And get as much information about them as we can that we also reveal to them to kind of help them navigate life and to see where maybe things have kind of gone off the rails, and how honestly some of the problems that we experience in life, some of the relational hiccups that we have, are related to the fact that we have these incredibly strong strengths that we're not tempering or using in an appropriate way. Just to give you an example, we use the Strengths Finder assessment, and I have a lot of really strategic strengths, and then I have one strength called belief, which means I pretty much, once I believe something, you can just hang it in your ear if you think you're going to change my mind about it. In the raw, that's what it looks like. My wife would say, before we took that assessment and understood, and we did this 16 yeyears ago, it's like before we took that assessment and understood that about me, she's like, I just thought he was a jerk. Because we would be talking about a problem, right? And she would be wanting to offer her solution, and I would be like, no, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do that either. No, that's not going to work. No, that won't work. And the reality is that's my strength. I figure stuff out and I do it really, really fast. So everything that she's presenting to me, I've thought about it already, and I can see 10 ways that it won't work. Now, she's incredibly relational, right? She doesn't care if I use her solution. She just wants us to talk about it together. We just gotta talk about it. Let's just do it together. And I'm like, ugh, so tedious. No, but not knowing that about myself, I came across like a jerk to a lot of people. I don't come across like a jerk to anybody anymore, I'm sure. But a lot of people don't realize they have these incredible strengths, but because they didn't know how to use them and they didn't know when it was appropriate, it's created a lot of relational stress in their life, and they've had a lot of falling outs with family. A lot of these things will drive you to drink, drive you to drug if you don't understand it the right way. And so, Fresh Start gathers all of this information, helps them understand themselves, and then assigns them with a mentor. And, that mentor and the directors of the programs actually help them come up with their plan of what their success is going to look like. And typically they're like, well, I just want to get a job and get on my feet. There I go again. Sorry. I need to learn a different accent. And then we encourage them to dream bigger, right? Because getting on your feet means you can just get knocked off your feet again. And so we want them to be stable. And so that's what Fresh Start does. So basically, the Compassion United serves in all aspects of the poverty landscape, making us a dynamic and holistic solution to address the needs of the poor, the unsheltered, the addicted, and just the hopeless in our community. So the next phase of that is this Well, let me just share this with you really quick, because this was the impact. Every year in December, we put out something called the Impact Report. And the Impact Report is basically all of the successes and all of the impact that we feel like we've had over the past year. And from 2020, this is what the Compassion United Impact, some of what the Compassion United Impact Report contained. Served over 42,000 hot meals. Provided almost 1 million pounds of groceries to over 25,000 people in Montgomery County. Provided clothing and hygiene items to those in need throughout the region. Had 1,602 volunteers serve over 21,000 hours in CU programs. Provided transitional housing for 28 men and women who decided that they wanted to see a change in their lives, and provided 2,238 hours of mentoring, teaching, and recovery group time. So we're busy, but there's a lot happening, and a lot more took place last year. And I keep saying I'm going to tell you about that later. I really am going to tell you about all of it. So the next phase of of where we're going is this concept called Miracle City. Several years ago, Carl and I began to dream of something that we thought would completely change the landscape of compassion ministry in Montgomery County and beyond. And this idea would be this innovative master plan community that would meet the unique and tangible needs of the unsheltered, of the poor, and the under-resourced in our community. So we imagined that this would be, this place would empower them and equip them to believe that a transition from hopelessness, right, a transition from their current, whatever that circumstance was, into a life of restored dignity, of self-worth, and of self-sufficiency was something that was possible. So at the time, it's really funny. It's not funny. I put out a video on a week ago Tuesday, and a week ago Tuesday was when that idea first started to churn in my mind. I was in the hospital. I had diverticulitis, and I was in the hospital waiting for the inflammation to go down so that they could do surgery. And while I was there, I was reading a book by Matthew Barnett called "The Church That Never Sleeps." And that's a great title. But anyway, he was talking about the Los Angeles, he's the founder of the Los Angeles Dream Center and that concept. And I was reading that book, and that's where I really started to dream about this possibility, something like this for Montgomery County. Now, at the time, that was so far out of reach for us. I was still on staff. Carl and I were both still on staff at a church, and all we were really doing at that time was we had breakfast in the park, and we had taken over this building in downtown for this place called the Conroe House of Prayer, but that really had no legs on it at the time. So we put that back on the back burner. So fast forward, 2017 was a devastating year for us. We had lost a lot of people who were very close to us personally. We lost the Joy House in the hurricane. And it was just a year marked by loss. And what we really felt is by the end of that year, though, the Lord was inviting us to dream again. And he started to reawaken this passion, this idea of this concept that we had put on the back burner so many years ago. And he was starting to give us greater vision and greater clarity for it. And I remember I was in the shower one time and I was praying, and while I was praying, I just saw like driving into this driveway, and over the top of it was this arch that said, "Welcome to Miracle City." And I just I ripped the shower curtain back. Don't put that picture in your mind right now. And I yelled at Carla, "The Lord wants us to call it Miracle City." And so that's where the name was born. So January 2018 hit, we met our team, we started talking to them about it. I started, one of the gentlemen who's on my board now, he wasn't at the time, he's a business consultant, and he started coaching us to make our business side of what we do look better. And in the process of doing that, he asks you, what's your BHAG? Y'all know what BHAG is? Big, hairy, audacious goal. And I remember sitting at the table, across the table from him, and he's like, Luke, what's your BHAG? And I'm like, I want to build a city. And he's like, what do you mean by that? And I started telling him about this concept, and he started working with us to do that. So a couple of months later, crazy stuff started happening because God's so good. You got to know that. Listen, I'm not good at this, y'all. I feel like I'm Forrest Gumping my way through this thing, and that's what grace looks like. It's beautiful. A couple of months later, I get a call from John Hull at the Woodlands United Methodist Church, and he says, hey, let's go to lunch. And so me and Carla go to lunch with him, and he tells us, what are big projects that you're working on? And we start talking to him about Miracle City, because this wasn't public yet. Nobody really knew this. And he's like, that's great. Okay, well, great. So we're about to do a building campaign. Y'all know what the Woodlands United Methodist Church is, right? The Methodome, the biggest, the church that 10% of the Woodlands goes to. 15? Probably, yeah. Is it really? Did they grow? No. They really are a great bunch of folks. But he said, we're about to enter into this building campaign, and what they do whenever they do a building campaign is they while they're raising the money, they commit a portion of the money to a local mission and a portion of it to a foreign mission. And he said, we want you to be a part of that as well. So Compassion United is going to be the local mission. I was like, yeehaw! And he says, that could be 50,000, it could be 100,000. I don't know what it's going to be. And I'm like, hey, it could be 10,000. I'd be excited. So the year progressed, and I'm having conversations with a buddy of mine who had recently been elected to city council, and just talking about the plan. There was so one in October of I'm sorry, I'm giving you a chronology here because it's exciting. I'm a storyteller. I'm sorry. So we're moving to the end of 2018. Remember, we just kind of started talking about this the beginning of that year. It was in October of 2018, and one of the city councilmen, who's also a downtown business owner, he comes in to the CHOP one morning, and he's so mad his eyes are bleeding, and he's like, I need to talk to you now. And I'm like, okay. So we go outside, and he's like, something's got to happen. And he had an encounter with a homeless gentleman who was having a bad day, and he got really upset about it. And we got to do something. And I'm like, well, I said, man, I've been trying to talk to you for 2 months. I got a plan. And I kind of gave him the elevator pitch. And he said, wait a minute, you're trying to move? And I said, yeah, man. And he said, okay, the city's got to get behind you on this. And I said, yes, they do. So 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the office with him, with the mayor, and with the city administrator. And that city councilman, the Sunday before that, had gone to an Acts retreat. Are y'all familiar with Acts? Walk to Emmaus? Anybody? It was like this, in the Methodist church, it's Walk to Emmaus. In the Catholic church, it's Acts. But it's basically a weekend where you get away and get really spiritual. Totally under-communicated that, but nevertheless, that's what it was. So he was feeling very spiritual at the moment. And he's in this meeting, and he's crying, talking about how horrible he feels because of how poorly he's treated those people, right? And I'm like, man, this is gold, I didn't even barely needed to make the presentation. He did it all for me. And so by the end of the year, the city of Conroe had committed to give us 5 acres of land for this project. And the long and the short of it is, I don't know if y'all can see that, but that is an aerial rendering of the actual piece of property where the Miracle City project is going to reside. So on there, you might not be able to see it from there, but we have got, basically everything that we would want to put, everything that we would do in order to empower and transition the homeless and the unsheltered is on this campus. So we have our Miracle City Day Center, which is what the Conroe House of Prayer will evolve into. That'll be our church for the homeless, but it'll also, they'll be able to do laundry. They'll be able to take showers. They'll be able to get on a computer and, look for jobs, reach out to, family that they've disconnected with. Basically we want to fill that up with programs and with opportunities that will keep them on site all day for a couple of reasons. One is if they're there, then they're not wandering around Conroe causing problems. But the other thing, and I believe is the most important thing, is that the more time we get to spend with them as community, as family, the greater the chances are that we're going to be able to move them into transition, right? So it's not going to be like, okay, you had breakfast, let's do your laundry, and then we're going to look for a job. We're going to have a combination of relationship building time and life building time, right? Hey man, why don't we go play a game of ping pong, and then we're going to go jump on a computer and work on a resume, and then we can sit down and eat lunch together afterwards, and long conversation about poverty culture as to why there's actually sociological study behind why that's a good way to do things, but I'm not going to go into that. That's what the day center will be. Now, for those who are ready to move into transition, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, there's 5 structures up there. From there, they probably look like blurry little rectangles. But those are the transition houses. So there's 2 for men, 2 for women, and 1 for women in crisis pregnancy, where they would be able to have their children with them. Right there in the middle, you'll see there's 7 little bitty structures. Here, okay. That is going to be, those are all duplexes for long-term supportive housing. So sorry, let me do that. That's what those are. And those duplexes for long-term supportive housing, that's going to be for people who just really aren't going to be able to earn a wage that is going to support them. Whether it's a mental health issue, a physical disability, whatever the case may be, they just, in Montgomery County, you have to make $15.62 an hour working 40 hours a week in order to be self-supportive. And there's just people who aren't going to do that. So the people who are in that situation, they would have a job on the campus, right? Because, you don't want people sitting around all day feeling no purpose. There's no dignity in that. And if they feel like they're contributing something to the community, right, they're going to have a more fulfilling life. And so we want them to feel like we want them to know, we want them to contribute to that community. So they'll have a job that they'll do on campus in lieu of any kind of rent. And the reality is some of those people might live there until they die. And that's okay, because that's what family does. We take care of people their whole life. And then over on the far right-hand side, there's a great big building there that says the Miracle City Empowerment Center. So that's the building that we're currently working on right now. That's just the elevation of that building. So that's the building that we're currently working on. Long term, that's going to be where everybody goes for the classes that they have. That's where our offices are going to be. That's where we're going to have all of the things that we're going to teach in Fresh Start that are going to lead them and empower them with the skills that they need to work. Not just vocational training. We don't want to just teach them how to do a job, but realistically, you have to teach people how to get a job. And most importantly, you have to teach people how to actually have a job. Does that make sense? The difference there. Somebody might be incredibly skilled at something, but if their attitude is dreadful, they're not going to keep the job. If they are emotionally immature and they walk into an adult situation, right, and they have confrontation or conflict at work and they respond to it like an emotional 12-year-old, they're not going to keep a job. And because they're an emotional 12-year-old, it's always going to be somebody else's fault. Because that's what teenagers do, right? Not any teenagers that are in here, other teenagers. So this right here, that will be our day center. That's the building with the church in it. And there's the floor plan that we have for that. Huge space for church. Currently, everybody has to take their food and put it on their lap. We'll have a separate dining hall in the kitchen, so they won't have to do that anymore. And it's going to be a great facility. This is our transition houses. This is the initial floor plan for the transition houses, with the exception of the one for women in crisis pregnancy, and that's what we think that one's going to look like. That one has to be done a little bit differently because it's going to have women there who have children. And so all of this has been happening really, really fast. We had incredible momentum coming out of 2019 and going into 2020, and really thought that all of that was going to be halted when, global pandemic hit. But we had some really amazing things that happened. We were awarded a Montgomery County Community Development Block Grant for $1.25 million for our Miracle City Day Center. Now, for those of you who don't know what a block grant is, it is HUD money that is distributed for community development within the county. So let me say that to you a different way. The federal government is going to pay for us to build our church building. I'm like, you realize it's getting, and realistically they said, well, we can't, because that says religious service, we can't pay for that portion of it, but we're going to do everything else. And I'm like, but we're a church. And they're like, well, are you going to make anybody go to church to get food? Well, no. I mean, I wouldn't do that now. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'm like, okay, no problem. So 1.25, and this is in 2020, right? 1.2, global pandemic, right? $1.25 million for the block grant. Had a lady call me out of the blue, sent me an email and said, hey, where are you on your funding? I got a few questions. And I said, well, why don't we talk? And so we talked. And I told her, well, we had to cancel our gala because of the pandemic, and we had planned on raising $250,000. I should have told her we had planned on raising more than that. Because the long and the short of it was, after that conversation, she says, okay, I'm going to give you a check for $150,000 right now, and then I'm going to go into the bank and get you another check, cashier's check, for another $100,000. So she gave us $250,000. We had another donor put up $100,000 for a matching campaign, and that was met very quickly. And then we had the Gabriel Foundation gave us another $100,000. And then here's a crazy one. We had started a campaign, we broke ground in October and started a campaign to raise $900,000 between October 15th and February 15th. And I'm sitting, we do this thing every year on New Year's Eve, where I'm somewhere, we're somewhere where people can come and meet me if they want to drop off, a check. And so I was talking to one gentleman called me and asked me where we were, and I said, we need $530,000. And he said, okay, me and my wife are going to bring you a check for $530,000. And I was like, okay, because that's not weird at all, right? All in all, and this is the faithfulness of God, global pandemic and the worst economic crisis of my lifetime, the Lord was faithful to secure $2.65 million for this project. And so this is where we are today. Well, this is kind of the progression here. So it's like, for me, hard to believe that, 12 years ago in a hospital bed, the spark of a dream. I was on Dilaudid at the time. Maybe that's why it didn't seem impossible. No. Just that moment, like just being inspired by what we were seeing in another city and being driven by wanting to be able to do more to change people's situation, to make it, we didn't just want to see people saved, we wanted to see people successful. And that dream just kind of was tucked away for so many years, and when the Lord's ready, it all becomes so clear in my mind and in my heart. But then to see how the Lord is bringing people in to be a part of this every step of the way. People are like, well, how's the project going? And my response is, it's well, not fast enough, but like so much faster than I thought it would ever be. I was telling people, last year, they're like, well, so what do you think about all this? And I'm like, well, I kind of feel like a chubby kid running downhill, My momentum is carrying me faster than my feet will move, and I feel like I could fall on my face at any moment. But the Lord is so good and so faithful. So by the end, 10 full years of operation, the Miracle City is going to have the capacity to holistically transform the lives of 1,250 people and serve over 120,000 under-resourced families with food, with clothing, with emotional and spiritual guidance, and more. Introducing hope and help into their less than fortunate circumstances. And we are going to have incredible opportunities we do now. We have actually, we implemented a platform called Point. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with Point, but basically you can download an app and you can, when you download the app, you can search out Compassion United, and then every time we have a volunteer opportunity, our leaders post that and you're notified. And so we have needs for, y'all don't need anybody, do you? Well, they're going to, and you'll hear more about that in the future, right? I believe they are. Really great things are happening with Destiny Kids. I'm just really going to tease you with that because it's amazing. But, Destiny Kids needs volunteers. My wife is the director of our empowerment program, Fresh Start, so we need mentors. Our food pantry, we do food pantries during the week, and then we have mobile markets on Saturdays, and we always need people to come out and serve at those. That's something that a lot of people do as a church for like $250. That pays for all the food, right? And then the church comes out and helps distribute that. And we just kind of move around from place to place with all the logistics and record all the data, but that's things that people can do as a church. And as this campus is built more and more, there's going to be even more opportunities for people to get involved. And that's one of the things that we're incredibly passionate about. Like, you saw the number, we had 1,602 volunteers last year. At that time, when we had 1,602 volunteers, I want to say we probably had 4 people on paid staff. So that's how we want to do this. We don't want to pay anybody. No. Our desire when we began this has always been, we've said that this is an outreach and this is an in-reach, right? This is an outreach because we're going to go out into the community and we're going to bring them into the church family. But this is an in-reach because we're going to reach into the church and we're going to bring them out into the community, right? And we believe that with that convergence, where the body of Christ is coming together to show what Jesus looks like to people who really need to know what Jesus looks like, that's how we're going to see the kingdom of God made manifest in this world. And that's how we're going to see our world transformed. Amen.